Hello, everybody. Welcome into a rare Saturday morning edition of Patriots Beat Live. Evan Lazar with Alex Barth, as always. And Alex, last night the Patriots surprised us all a little bit. Surprised me, certainly, when they jumped up and traded up in the second round to draft Christian Barmore from Alabama. They then stayed at 96. It sounded like Bill Belichick was talking about how difficult it was to make trades this year, that the value of draft picks was all over the place compared to normal years. So they stay pat at 96. They take Ronnie Perkins from Oklahoma. First and foremost, just your reaction to the trade up for Christian Barmore. We'll get into the player himself, but were you surprised to see them part with those two fourth-round picks? Because I wasn't surprised at all.
I wasn't either. I thought, because there was the report earlier in the week, right, that they were going to move up at some point and try to close that 50-pick gap. And I wonder if they looked at it and said, it's really expensive to trade up. We probably don't have two in us, so we can move up here and get a player. I think they had a first-round grade on. We can move up here and get a player. We have a first-round grade now that we know how they grade it. But
first-round numbers, colors, and letters is what you mean.
Which was awesome. We'll get into that in a little bit. But basically, and Bill said last night, top defensive tackle on the board. Bill called him the top defensive tackle in the draft. And I think they said we can either move up now and go get this guy, or we can use those picks, move up later, maybe close the gap. It's a year where they need to consolidate picks, right? I don't think they wanted to pick at 46 and then add and then maybe pick at 96. So I like it. I think it took me a little bit longer, and by a little bit longer, I mean like 5 minutes, to like than maybe some of the other picks they've made. But I think that, especially when you look at what they did on day one, when you look at what they did in round one, Mac Jones was the safe pick. We need a quarterback. Here's a quarterback with a high floor. Let's go get him. You check it off. Barmore's the antithesis of that. This is, there's, they have to have a plan for him. And his success is going to hinge on how they use him. He's just that kind of player. But boy, if he hits, he is going to be a disruptive 3-down player. And even the floor, even if he doesn't get there, the floor is Adam Butler, who's still a good, serviceable, useful player. So, I like they kind of went safe early on. And by the way, Perkins too, they went safe early on and they come out on day two and they take a couple of big swings and they take a couple of guys who have extremely high upside. And I like that because that's what you want to do in the NFL draft. A little bit of everything. They did the safe pick. Now they've taken a couple big shots here on defense, and that leads us right into day three.
I think it's actually pretty crazy, the defensive tackle market. Christian Barmore is clearly IDL 1. That was obvious, I think, from everybody's perspective, and including the Patriots' perspective, apparently. But still out there is Davian Nixon from Iowa, Marvin Wilson from Florida State, Tyler Shelvin from LSU, Bobby Brown, Jalen Twyman. I mean, the league said that they did not like this DT class, and the league was being honest based off of how they've drafted so far. They're pretty much everybody else in the DT class that I liked looking at it is still available on day three. So that's what tells you a lot about this class. And with Barmore, my biggest fear with Christian Barmore is that the Patriots were going to draft him in the first round, right? I really didn't think he was a first round talent. I thought he was a guy that was a little bit too inconsistent, a little bit too streaky, not an every down player right away because of his issues against the run that we can get into in a little bit. So I kind of felt like at 15, this is not a good idea. But the fact that they were able to come back up just a little bit and get him at 38, that's a great value. And as you said, a player with an extremely high ceiling that instantly fills the Adam Butler role. And I think that he's somebody that right away, I think has a floor of Adam Butler, like you said, as a pass rush specialist, someone that play 40-50% of the snaps, play on third downs, and really rush the passer. And I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that he's maybe the most talented defensive lineman that they've drafted since Vince. I mean, I think that's really the last time, if we look at it and just look at pure talent, right? And not necessarily any terms of technique or where we're at in terms of his floor right now. But just pure raw talent, athleticism, explosiveness, get off, upper body power, the whole thing that Christian Barmore brings to the table. I would say that he's the most impressive or talented defensive tackle that they've had since Big Vince, which is saying a lot. So I can't really think of another guy that has that much. I guess maybe, if you want to factor in somebody like Akeem Hicks or something like that, he had those types of tools, but certainly in the draft or as a young player, a Christian Barmore is the most talented DT they've had since Vince.
It's interesting though, because Big Vince was what, 240, 250, right? Akeem Hicks was kind of the same thing. Like Barmore's not your typical nose tackle. Your typical nose tackle's, 6'2", 6'3", at least 330, right? And you're getting into like 340, 345, 350. Barmore's 6'5", 310.
Yeah.
That's not – guys don't succeed at nose tackle at that size in the NFL. It's incredibly rare. We talked about this yesterday, right? It's incredibly rare because a huge part of that job is you just have to be able to eat up space and eat up blockers. And Barmore's not even a big 310. I mean, he's just a built guy.
He's wrapped up,
Right. There's a ton of those guys in college. That skill set generally doesn't transfer over to the NFL well, because at a certain point, you just need the size. That being said, the guys who have hit from that mold, like the two that stand out, and I'm not saying Barmore is going to be either of these players, but the two from that mold that stand out, Aaron Donald and Richard Seymour.
Yeah.
So if you hit on that, it's a hit. And like maybe Bill sees some of that. I don't know that
I don't think he's Richard Seymour because I think they play differently. I think Richard Seymour was a more stout and kind of more technically sound guy, whereas with Barmore, he is an explosive, attack-minded defensive tackle, right? This guy wants to come through the gap, and he wants to come off the ball hard. And some of the things that I had issues with him against the run were that he was constantly moving, right? And instead of just anchoring and getting his body low and leveraging and holding on at the point of attack and just kind of absorbing contact against the run like the Patriots like their guys to do, Barmore was trying to slip guys or he was trying to explode through guys, and he got himself in trouble. So if they can get him to be a little bit more thoughtful as a run defender, right? Just be aware of your blocks a little bit more. Be aware of the technique that you're supposed to be using on a double team, or you're supposed to be using in an outside zone based block or something like that. Then I think that he can definitely react a little bit better to the things that he's out there when he's out there against the run. Now, as a pass rusher, Aaron Donald is his own freak of nature, right? So the guy that he reminds me of a little bit is Jared McCoy down in Tampa Bay, who just had good length and great get off. That first step is really the key that you see with Barmore, and see how fluid he is as a pass rusher too, to laterally move and kind of kick inside when guys jump out at him. He'll jump inside on those arm overs, or he can have that kind of quick, efficient footwork that allows him to get around people really, really easily. He gave guards in the SEC all sorts of trouble trying to keep up with him as a pass rusher. And I think the stat is from PFF is 65 total quarterback pressures over the last 2 years, which led all the Power 5 IDLs. So somebody that can really bring the pass rush. I also think that he can be effective in a stun scheme, right? Like Adam Butler was, where you have him penetrate on the stun and have somebody wrap around that penetration. He was really good at that at Alabama too. Slant rushing, stunt rushing, certainly one-on-one rushing. Anything that you want from a pass rusher, this guy brings to the table. He can hand fight. He can hit you with upper body power and then throw you off of him with a disengage. He can go right around you with his speed and his explosiveness. He is going to be a tough guy to block for everybody that the Patriots face week in and week out. The question really is, can he hit that ceiling of a complete player by rounding out against the run? And if he does, then I think he's going to be an absolute force.
Yeah, I think, the question was just when we talked about this the other day, because I made myself look like an idiot. Oh, I don't know if they'll take him. I don't know if they'll take a rotational player that high. But
at 38, they take him at 38. They take him at 15.
Well, I think I said top 50. I didn't say it on here. I said it on the Felger Mass Big Board videos. But this tells me they don't see him as a rotational player. They think he's going to be a 3-down player. Maybe not this year, but by the end of his rookie contract, somebody had the stat last night. It might have been Doug Hyde. I apologize if I'm misattributing it. That the Patriots haven't had a defensive tackle play more than 60% of their snaps on a regular basis since Vince. in 2012. I think it was at 74% was the stat. I wonder if they see Barmore as a guy who can play 70-75% of the time.
Yeah, and that's something that I wanted to talk about because at Alabama, and Bill Belichick talked about this last night when he got on with us, Barmore played a lot of 5 technique defensive end over the tackle. And I think they see him as a player in their 3-4 that can play as a 34 defensive end on base downs on first and second down. And then when they get into a pass rush situation, that's when they're going to kick him inside to 3 technique or kick him inside to 1 technique. He didn't play a ton of straight up nose, right? He didn't play over the center a whole lot. Most of the time he was shaded nose. So he was in the A gaps. But at the same time, and he also loved that tilted nose hand positioning. But anyways, at the same time, I think he's a player that can move up and down the line of scrimmage. So although he's not necessarily the most stout defensive tackle against the run in the middle of the line, if you're going to play him as like a backside, weak side, 3-4 defensive end, then we're talking, because I wouldn't put him on the strong side yet because I think he's going to get pushed around by the double teams at the moment. So if you put him on the side of the tight end, the guard and the tackle are going to give him problems. But if you put him on the weak side of the formation where he's going to see a lot of one-on-one blocks back there, and he can be a little bit more aggressive on the weak side because the run's not usually going to go that direction. So you can backdoor it. You can try to shoot the gap. A lot of the Patriots run fits are backside defensive ends are 1 gapping. Most of the time, the front side guys are 2 gapping. Sometimes the backside guy, they allow him to 1 gap, and they allowed Adam Butler to do that a little bit last year. So I think that if they see him as a 3-4 defensive end and then an inside player on passing situations, then he can definitely play every single down. They just need to get him to think a little bit better about what he's doing against the run and be a little less aggressive and a little bit more mindful of the blocks that are coming his way, and he's going to be just fine as a 3-4 end.
Yeah, and some of it too is he just needs to put a little muscle on. But I've always said this: whenever you say, "Oh, guys too small, guys too," whatever, or not you, but like people in general, "Oh, too small," these guys are going to put on 10, 15, 20 pounds once they get in an NFL weight room. Like that's just what happens. And I think that I'll say this with Barmore in terms of, because everybody's talking about him as that specialized pass rusher against the run. I remember when he first showed up to Alabama, and I didn't really know who he was. It was probably 2 or 3 games before I realized he wasn't a linebacker, because the force of which he gets into the backfield at times, it looks like he has to be coming from the second level. You don't know what I mean by that?
Like, he's his get off is palpable. Like you notice it when you see it out there, when you see him out there. And when they played in the college football playoff, Notre Dame and Ohio State have 2 really good offensive lines, excuse me. NFL players everywhere on both of those offensive lines. Last night, the Ohio State center got drafted. Wyatt Davis, obviously their right guard, got drafted, and they have a couple more NFL guys on that line too. Notre Dame, Aaron Banks, Liam Eichenberg, all these guys are getting drafted, and Christian Barmore just absolutely wrecked all of them. So when he puts it all together, he is as good of a defensive tackle prospect as there is. A lot of people down in Alabama compared him to Quinnen Williams. Right? Not as consistent as Quinnen was at Alabama, but that kind of skill set. And I think in other years, and a year where maybe he was a little bit more consistent on tape than he was this past season, he's definitely a first-round pick.
Yeah. So again, it just goes down to you don't think a guy is going to get out of a 3-4 stance and be in the backfield with that kind of force, with that kind of urgency. And then the build as well, where he is kind of this more muscular guy. He's not this typical, just big body, fill the gap lineman. So Patriots fans should be excited about this one. They should. He's an exciting, explosive player. The upside's tremendous. And this kind of fits for Ronnie Perkins too. But Barmore, again, if he hits, Christian Barmore getting out of the first round could end up being, one of the big what was going on of this draft. I think, when they do the redraft in 10 years, there's a real chance you see Barmore going in the top 10. Yeah,
I agree. I think the reason why there were some, I don't know if it was on NFL Network's broadcast or ESPN's broadcast that we were on the air, so I didn't hear it, but apparently there were some character red flags that came out that maybe caused him to slip a little bit outside the first round. But if Bill Belichick's drafting him, I'm sure Nick Saban told him that none of that was actually real, right? Or none of it's actually that big of a deal. And then, it was a streaky tape. It was the fact that college football playoff, he comes out, he has 12 quarterback pressures. I think he had 3 or 4 tackles for loss in that game, in those 2 games against the run. And then the rest of the season, he wasn't anywhere near as effective of a player as he was in those 2 games. So you have to sort of see where you sort of where it falls for you, right? In terms of, do you feel like it's in the middle? Do you feel like it's closer to the low end? Do you feel like it's closer to the high end? I think the Patriots are obviously banking on it being closer to the high end, and all the power to them. I think it's a great pick, especially where they were able to get Christian Barmore. So that's Christian Barmore. We're going to move on now to Ronnie Perkins. This was an interesting one. I really understood the Barmore pick. I was fully on board with it. I'm not really sure what they need with another edge defender. This is definitely a situation of, I would assume, best player available. A lot of people, Daniel Jeremiah, they had him as a top 50 talent, Ronnie Perkins, in this draft.
There was one point where he was like, I mean, he wasn't as high as Barmore, but a border, like some people said, end of the first round.
Yeah, and now we get him at 96, or the Patriots get him at 96, excuse me, and it definitely feels like this was the best player on our board by far, and we still want to add front 7 help, and we still want to get, improve the pass rush, which is what Ronnie Perkins will do. So we're just going to take the player, because the path to get him on the field through Kyle Van Noy, Matt Judon, Chase Winovich, he's going to be the 4th or the 5th edge when they get into training camp at best.
Well, I think that's okay. I think he's a guy who might be a year away. Again, this is like a pure upside pick.
Yeah.
This is pure. We are looking for the player he's going to be in 3 years. So I don't think a redshirt year would hurt him. Van Noy's on a 1-year deal. So I don't think, I'm the one who's been saying you have to have a plan for the guys you pick. You have to have a plan for the guys you pick. First off, Bill came out last night, shut that right down. But not quite, because the plan doesn't have to be right away. You just have to have a plan to get that guy in the lineup at some point. And I think I actually, me and Bill might have agreed. What he said might have backed that up. Now I think about it. Maybe that's revisionist history. But I think there is a plan for Perkins, not right away. Like I said, Van Noy's on a 1-year deal. We don't know what they think of Chase Winovich at this point, right, with the benching last year, and that was weird. And Perkins, to me, is very similar to Winovich. So that stood out to me. But, high motor guy, another guy who plays shot out of a cannon coming off the line of scrimmage, just a vicious hitter. And he brings the confidence too, which I don't sleep on that. You need confidence playing the NFL. And he comes out right away. Like I asked him last night, I said, he said, first of all, he comes out and says, Patriots fans are going to love me. And I know that based on watching, what kind of players they've loved in the past, which is objectively a good answer. So then I asked him, I said, okay, what players? And he gives me Willie McGinnis, Donta Hightower, and Stephon Gilmore. I know he's not saying he's those players, but
confident guy.
Right. You're putting yourself in left. I mean, and there was no hesitation. Which players did you look up to on the Patriots? Willie McGinnis.
Right.
Okay. Like he let us know right away what he thinks of his game. And I love it.
If he can be as stat on the edge as Willie McGinnis was, then the Patriots are in good shape getting him in the 3rd round. He is definitely someone that, look, I remember a few months ago when Daniel Jeremiah put him in his top 50, the first thing I did the next day was pull up the Ronnie Perkins tape and be like, all right, well, if DJ sees this guy as a top 50 pick, then there must be something there, right? There must be some sort of talent with the guy. Very good motor, as you said. Really good hand fighter. He's got strong hands, and he's got that ability to kind of get underneath guys and convert speed to power. So you see a lot of bull rushing. You see a lot of long arm. You see a lot of things like that, and that can move the pocket and collapse the pocket on the edge. Not necessarily the most twitchy or the most explosive player, certainly more in the mold of a traditional power rusher. Now, he did do a lot of rushing with his hand in the dirt, and he's undersized for that. He's only 252 pounds. So I asked him that question last night. I said, how much stand-up have you done? How much, have you done on your feet? And he said, I've really been sort of practicing that behind the scenes because that's not exactly what Oklahoma was asking me to do. And that's an interesting piece of this. And Belichick alluded to it as well afterwards. He said, we're not sure if he's a defensive end or if he's an outside linebacker. We'll sort of figure that out when we get to practice, right? So I think that's going to be the big question with him is he stout enough? Is he strong enough? Because he plays it at the college level. He played, very, very strong play strength, high motor, aggressive, attack-minded, very good block recognition in terms of run blocks. When he sees a puller, he knows where the puller is coming. He's able to slip the puller. When he sees a tight end coming across the formation, he's able to beat the tight end to the spot. That type of instinctive block recognition was really apparent. But what I really liked the most about him was the hands. Really heavy-handed player that was able to throw those hands and soften the edge or get jolt back blockers or reset the line of scrimmage. When you play strong like that, I think you're going to ultimately be a 3-4 outside linebacker for the Patriots in a 2-point stance. So that brings us to the question of, okay, well, if Ronnie Perkins is going to be in the mix here, what does it mean for Winovich? What does it mean for Anthony Jennings, right? I think that those two guys in particular, I think we obviously know Josh Uche was trying to learn and develop off the ball and on the line of scrimmage so that he could have that type of versatility. With Winovich and Jennings, the two of those guys are going to need to develop some off the line of scrimmage skill. They're going to have to develop as inside linebackers because they are not players that are going to have a ton of opportunity to play on the edge anymore. There's just not a lot of snaps there. So I'm really interested to see how this all shakes out in terms of the depth chart.
Yeah, and I think we'll see what happens when it gets into camp again. I don't think, I think they're fine letting Jennings develop for another year and letting Perkins for a year. Perkins is a guy maybe we see some more come 2022 in my mind. Not, and who knows, maybe they figure out a special teams role for him again. The motor he plays with, he's going to be able to get reps on special teams.
Yeah, so that's the way I feel as well, is sort of this is kind of like them drafting Damian Harris when they drafted Sony Michel the year before, right? And they're kind of, okay, this is our insurance policy. If Winnow is somebody that that they don't feel is going to play right away, in terms of Ronnie Perkins, maybe they let Winnow kind of play it out and see if he's able to sort of round himself out against the run. If that doesn't work out, we'll give Ronnie Perkins 2022, or we'll give him the second half of the season this year. So we'll see what happens. But I definitely feel like this was the best player available pick. This was a pick about a guy that a lot of people had rated much higher on the board than 96.
They drafted 3 guys in the last 2 days that were all in. Look, we all know scout grades mean nothing, but just for what it's worth, in the last 2 days, they've drafted 3 guys who were all projected as, within this draft cycle as first round picks. So that's right. And by the way, they could there's a couple more, and they're a little more. The guys left who kind of fit that bill are guys who just were great in 2019 and had bad 2020s. But Bill said that they're kind of looking at guys like that. They're just kind of going up and getting talent. I don't want to say they're totally disregarding fit, because that's not an accurate way to put it, but that's the simplest way to put it. But they are just going out and adding talented players to the football team, and it's fun to watch, and it's going to be fun to watch in camp, and we'll ultimately see how it works out. And look, maybe not all these picks work out, but I don't know, the N'Keal Harry pick at the time, right? That we knew, that pick, and I don't mean to pick on N'Keal, but the N'Keal Harry pick at the time was, okay, this is a weird pick. It was, AJ Brown was on the board. There were better players at other positions on the board, whatever. Maybe some of these players don't work out, but all of the picks make sense. I don't think we're going to go back. People will go back in bad faith argument and, so-and-so went 2 picks later. But objectively, all the picks they're making in the moment are the right picks.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially when you saw how the corner and the offensive tackle board shook out by the 96th pick. I wonder if Spencer Brown, the Northern Iowa tackle, was going to be in consideration at 96. He went 2 picks earlier to the Buffalo Bills. I
feel like if they were going to take him, they would have taken Stone Forsythe, right? I mean, 2 very similar players.
Maybe they feel like Stone Forsythe, in the 5th or the 6th, will be better for them than
see, I like him at 120. I really like him at 120. So
yeah, we'll see what happens with the tackle and cornerback position, because I'm still kind of interested to see, okay, what do they do here? Because the cupboard is getting pretty bare at both of those positions. The depth of the cornerback class wasn't great anyways. There are some names here that are certainly still available that might interest the Patriots. Tay Gowan from UCF, I think, is the top guy on the board now, getting into day 3 stuff and just what they might do today. Tay Gowan is the top guy on the board for most people from UCF, a long, athletic, very raw cornerback prospect. So that's why he's made it to day 3. The tackle board, we're talking about James Hudson from Cincinnati. We're talking about Stone Forsythe, maybe Deontay Smith from East Carolina, Dan Moore from Texas A&M. These are guys that maybe they could be interested in. We both love Stone Forsythe in terms of this value, 4th, 5th round pick. That seems to make a whole lot of sense. But Alex, what would you like them to do? I didn't mention any of the wide receivers. I know people in the chat are probably talking about wide receivers.
Yeah, that's we'll get to that. I feel like that's kind of its own conversation at this point.
Yeah, the other guy that's still available that I think would be really interesting for the Patriots is Jamar Johnson's still available. LeCount is still available. I think Tyree Gillespie from Missouri is also still available. So some of the safeties there's some safety talent there as well.
So I wrote about this last night at 2 a.m, so I apologize for any spelling mistakes. 985sportssub.com right now, predicting Patriots or potential Patriots targets on day 3. This draft's been very unbalanced from position to position, right? You look at, kind of how it's gone. And the cornerback market, especially with that run late on day 3, leading up to 96, the cornerback market's drained. Yeah. I love where the safety market's at right now, right?
Yeah.
Tackle I actually think is in decent shape. I think that they could do okay at tackle, but, the wide receiver board's kind of been knocked down a little bit. Outside linebacker, really been knocked down. Inside linebacker, I think there's still some good players on the board. So I wonder if that's where they attack, right? If that's what they go after. You mentioned the safeties. I love where it's at for safeties right now. I mentioned Stone Forsythe. I think James Hudson, you brought up too. If they want a developmental tackle, those are 2 of the better developmental tackles in this draft. And let's not forget the running backs. I saw somebody in the chat a little bit ago brought up Chuba Hubbard. I said it at 120 in that range, if Chuba Hubbard's there, Demetric Felton's another one. One of those guys at 120 certainly stands out to me. So there's a lot of different directions they go to, and maybe not at 120, but with that 177, 188 where they have the back-to-back, I think we start talking about a kicker being in play.
Oh, yeah.
So
definitely. And Michael Carter from North Carolina, running back from UNC, he's also still available. I view him as a guy that can do a little bit of everything. They can catch the ball.
I think he's going to go like, what pick do they have today? Like, I just think he's going to go right away.
He's going to go right away. Yeah. Cause he's a little undersized. He's in that sort of undersized, explosive, do it all type of running back mold. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Rex Burkhead, just in terms of those traits, not necessarily comparing them as players, but just in terms of what they have working for them. It's a little bit Rex Burkhead. Like you mentioned, the linebackers, there's a lot of talent still. Jabril Cox is still on the board. I don't know if Jabril Cox from LSU necessarily fits the Patriots roster construction. He kind of basically is Jalen Mills and Kyle Duggar and Adrian Phillips, like where does that another one of those types of guys fit in? But that could just be a talent grab if he's still there at 120. He's clearly going to be the best player available today. Dylan Moses is still on the board from Alabama. Cam McGrone is still on the board from Michigan. So some inside linebacker talent as well. There's definitely plenty of good players still on the board. I think it's really more so where the Patriots want to go in terms of position, right? And I definitely agree with you that running back is in the conversation. I would much rather a linebacker or a wide receiver, but I definitely think that running back is in the conversation as well. Let's talk about some of these wide receivers too, because I know the people in the chat are clamoring for us to.
Can we talk about one wide receiver?
I hope you're thinking the same wide receiver I am.
So. Probably not. I might be. I don't think.
All right. Well, all right. Go ahead. Give it to me.
No, I'm just going to say, I know everybody wants Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Patriots have the 15th pick today. It's not happening. I don't. If he's there, cool. Grab him. I'm not going to let myself get my hopes up for that.
There's always one guy though that the NFL in the receiver pool that all of us Twitter scouts, think is a great talent in the NFL. I remember Kelvin Harmon from a few years ago. Last year it was KJ Hill from Ohio State, fell to the 5th or the 6th round, or like Tyler Johnson, who fell to the 5th round. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think the biggest issue with him that you can think of is he's not an explosive vertical receiver, right? He's not somebody that's going to run by anybody. And in today's NFL, if you're going to be a top 100 pick, you have to have a second gear. You have to have that ability to separate vertically. And the NFL is sort of soured on these, technicians, these guys that are not necessarily the best athletes. So that's why I think he's still out there. I think he could continue to slide potentially a little bit like Tyler Johnson did, like KJ Hill did, just because of the speed.
Well, so is that who you were thinking of or no?
No, it was not.
Okay, good. Then we were thinking of the same person. So a guy I think, kind of fits that mold of the scouts level, or the media loves him, the scouts might not as much, Jalen Darden.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of.
Get Jalen Darden at 120. And we talked about this a little bit. The offense that they project to run under Mac Jones, you just need a yards after catch monster. And I can't talk about Jalen Darden without talking about the quote that he told the TV crew before game last year: making people miss is like brushing my teeth. I need to do it every day. Like that's the guy. That's the guy they need. I know he's small. I know it scares people. At this point, it's so worth the risk, especially with the way the rest of the wide receiver board has fallen. To me, it's time to go get Jalen Darden.
So I wonder if Jalen Darden's their guy too now. They seem a little bit reluctant this year, and maybe this is just a coincidence based off the picks, but they seem a little bit reluctant this year about the small school guys, right? You got 2 Alabama guys and an Oklahoma guy. So they're going big. They're going big tickets right now. But with Jalen Darden, I think that he is exactly what the offense needs. I would say that he's sort of, instead of Amari Rodgers or Elijah Moore or Rondell Moore in the second round, they get Jalen Darden in the 4th round. And Darden, someone that, just pulling up his pro day numbers, a 6.67 3-cone time. 6.67. So that tells you, when you watch the tape and then you look at that 3-cone time, you see that sort of ability to jitterbug ability, right? The change of direction, the quick separation skills at the top of the route, and then obviously the change of the direction with the ball in his hands. The reason why he's fallen a little bit is because he's 174 and only ran a 4.46. If he had ran a 4.36, then he'd be way off the board.
Wait, he's like, what is he, 5? What do you height in at? Not weigh in, height in. Like 5'7", I think?
Yeah, he's 5'7" and a half, 174. So he's...
I think it was the height more than the weight, because he has a frame where he can put some... Tutu Atwell, I didn't realize his weight in at 140.
Yeah, like 150.
Tutu Atwell's legitimately us.
Like that.
But the thing with Dar is, like, I think he can put some muscle on a little bit, so it's more the height, and everybody would throw out, oh, no receiver under 5'8", ever, blah, 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 whatever. Well, none have until one does. And, sure, the first round, you don't want to take that risk. This is why I love day 3, because now you start taking these risks. Now you start trying to find these unicorns, these players that maybe fell because they're talented, but there's one glaring trait that holds them back, and you go and see if you can override that one glaring trait and get a real player out of them. So, and to me, if there is a day 3 pick in this draft, like the guy who fits that mold of, okay, there's like one thing that's scaring teams away, but if you can work, and it's a big thing, but if you can work past that one thing, you're going to get a great player. Like Jalen Darden, to me, is such a day 3 pick. I love it. Chuba Hubbard, Demetric Felton are other ones too, if they can go get them. I'm
confused about the whole thing, and I think that it has a lot to do with the level of competition. But Tutu Atwell is the same size as Jalen Darden, right?
Smaller.
Yeah, maybe smaller.
Significantly smaller.
Yeah, and he get drafted in the 2nd round, or maybe it was the beginning of the 3rd round by Seattle, wasn't it?
Yeah, at some point in the middle of the day yesterday.
Yeah. So he gets drafted on day 2. Jalen Darden's still on the board. I get that Tutu Atwell played at Louisville. That must be the only, higher conference, higher level of college football. That's got to be the only explanation there. But I thought that one was interesting, that Darden still remains on the board. Tutu Atwell is gone. I think that those are 2 very comparable players. So again, I really like Jalen Darden in this spot now. I liked him maybe a little bit. You were a little bit higher on him as an end of the 3rd round guy for them. Here at 120, this is a great value for a guy like that. What did he have, like 30 touchdowns in the last
he led the conference in touchdowns last year, because he's also a return. He can return punts and kicks.
Right. I'm pretty sure he had some. He had some ridiculous. Here, I got it. He had some ridiculous touchdown stats.
Right. We talk about how they love college production. Right. The Patriots love regardless of, and Bill has mentioned that obviously the levels of competition are different, but regardless of the level of competition, did you produce, right? They look at that. 38 touchdowns in 4 years for Jalen Dart. Oh, that's just receiving, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, he had 19 receiving touchdowns last year at North Texas. 19. That's some Randy Moss stuff. You know,
in 9 games.
Yeah. So this is a big play, touchdown making machine. He can catch a slant and run 70 yards to the house. He can beat you over the top vertically on a go ball or something like that. Really, really talented player, Jalen Darden. The other name that's at the top of the board for most people right now at the wide receiver position is Taylon Wallace, who I liked a little bit, but I think the concern that I had with Taylon Wallace in terms of his fit with the Patriots was Oklahoma State runs an air raid system. They run an extremely limited route tree. If you're an outside receiver at Oklahoma State, you're running a go ball, you're running a dig, or you're running a stop route. That's it. You run 3 routes, right? And if you're a player that's going to kind of transition into the Patriot system, because Taylon Wallace right now, in terms of just pure skill set, is the best player available at the wide receiver position. But the problem is that if you look at just in terms of okay, converting into the Patriots system, he didn't run a different exotic route tree at Oklahoma State. Now we're going to throw him into this offense where he's going to have 17 different option routes to learn based off of leverage and all this kind of crazy stuff. That's a really steep sort of kind of transition. And I think that was another thing that just looking at the N'Keal Harry pick and sort of learning from the N'Keal Harry pick, I think that was one thing that they sort of missed on about N'Keal Harry's usage in college was that he had a really simplified route tree as well. So these players that have very simplified route trees and then come into the New England, they tend to be sinking a little bit, right? They tend to be swimming in it a little bit because there's just so much information and so much of a different sort of style coming into the Patriots versus what these air raid teams are doing.
Well, and let me just add this too, because people are asking, I can't believe they passed on a receiver, and are they really not going to take a receiver the second year in a row? Yeah, really, they might not. They don't need to. And this is kind of lesser now that you're on day 3 here as we go throughout the day, but stop me if you've heard this one before. They have 9 pass catchers on the roster. They're going to carry 4 tight ends. They have 5 wide receivers who are going to make the team. They're also going to be in 12 personnel a whole lot, which means there's really only snaps for 2 to 3 wide receivers. That 4th guy is probably, like right now, the 4th guy is N'Keal Harry. He's probably going to be a red zone specialist. You're not going to see a lot of snaps if you're the 3rd or 4th wide receiver. So, adding somebody to this group right now, unless you were going to get an elite talent who would push Nelson Aguilar or who would push Jacoby Myers for a starting job, you're just kind of spinning your wheels at that point. And we're like, those guys aren't left on the board. Jalen Darden, as much as I just raved about him, that's a project. That's a year away. So they really don't know. They don't need to add a wide receiver. There's not a ton of room for a wide receiver to make the team. And, if you get a guy that you can maybe put on the practice squad or gives you special teams ability, that's another thing. But I don't believe there's immediate need for it. The way I look at it right now, wide receiver is the top need in 2022, and they're going to have a chance to go get a guy like a Chris Olave or a John Mechie, and that's going to be awesome. But you just paid 4 pass catchers. You just paid 4 pass catchers good money in free agency. They're going to be okay. Like you can't just look at wide receivers. Like that's not how it works. You have to look at the context of the roster, the context of the offense. Their top 2 wide receivers are these guys named Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, and they're both pretty darn good football players. So, I saw some people saying you need speed. Yeah, speed could help, but that's, again, maybe you go late in the day and just get a burner and see what you can do with him. But they could also just bring back Damiere Byrd there. Like the push for a wide receiver, they're going to be fine without a real number one. We do this
every year. We do this every year.
They are going to be fine without a real number 1 wide receiver because they have 2 number 1 tight ends. Would it be nice if they had a guy like that? Sure. But Devonta Smith didn't fall to them. Jalen Waddle didn't fall to them. Jamar Chase didn't fall to them. And Kadarius Toney didn't fall to them. So, I guess Toney did, but they took Mac Jones. But you get my point.
Right.
The option wasn't there.
We do this every year with the wide receivers, even after they drafted N'Keal Harry because he didn't work out the way as planned. We do this every year. They need a wide receiver. The only thing that I'm asking the Patriots.
Well, hang on. Let me add the caveat. If they do move N'Keal Harry that's been reported, then maybe open that up a little bit more. Then maybe there's another spot. Sorry. Go ahead.
The only thing that I want them to do is take a wide receiver today. I didn't want them to take a wide receiver with one of their premium picks, really. Sure. If they take a wide receiver today, then it's all set, right? Just take somebody that you see a role for in terms of projecting long term. Okay, this guy's going to play Z for us. This guy's going to play X for us. Maybe it's a guy like Seth Williams from Auburn, who's a 6'4" X receiver. Maybe it's a guy
Jonathan Adams.
Maybe it's a guy like Semi Fahaku from Stanford, who's 6'4" and runs a 4.4. Right? Maybe it's somebody like that's a raw sort of upside play, like a Seth Williams.
I think Adams. I think if you really wait on a guy like Adams, right, you can probably stash him on the practice squad. He's that far away. And okay, for those of you who don't know, I'll give the Jonathan Adams spiel. Jonathan Adams is like an elite jump ball receiver. I mean, it's not fair to call him 50-50 balls with Jonathan Adams.
He likes to be a little flashy, though. Let's be honest. But
he was playing at what was it, Northern Arkansas? Arkansas State, something like that. Like
he's watched some Odell in his life. Let me put it to you that way. He
thinks he's Randy Moss. Yeah. So again, elite jump ball receiver. Maybe the best jump ball receiver in this class, if we're being honest. Yeah. But that's. I mean, he's not a burner. He's not a route runner. He's not a yards after catch guy. So if he can develop at least a little bit of the rest of his game, I mean, he's going to be an absolute red zone threat. So that's the guy where I think you could take him, put him on the practice squad this year to push N'Keal Harry. And then next year, when he has, a year of working in NFL practices under his belt, could be the guy. And you don't have to carry 10 pass catchers on the roster. Like, that's what I like for them at wide receivers, to do something like that.
Yeah, so another name that I want to mention quickly is Daz Newsome from North Carolina, who I think is like day 3 Amari Rodgers, right? Like, Amari Rodgers.
Well, isn't Jalen Darden day 3 Amari Rodgers?
A little bit, but I think Jalen Darden's so small. You know what I mean? Daz Newsome, I think, is a little bit more of their size type in terms of, okay, we're not drafting a guy that's 5'7", 175, right? Where we're getting a guy that's a little bit thicker than that. He has a lot of the same catch and run skill, and there's a lot of the same kind of gadget specialized package type of play skill as some of those guys like Rondell Moore and Amari Rodgers and Elijah Moore and the players that went early, Anthony Schwartz from Auburn. He has sort of those types of traits, but he's just falling a little bit in the draft because he's not quite as explosive as those players are. So he's someone that I think is interesting in terms of that. Get that guy later on a little bit instead of getting him, wasting a premium pick on it. You get Daz Newsome in the 5th round. I think that's a nice value play. I really like Amir Smith-Marset from Iowa too. Just a really smooth route runner. Really kind of you see some subtle explosiveness at the line of scrimmage in order to get open off of press coverage. You also see a little bit of just kind of quick twitch at the top of the route too. I think he can get open at the NFL level. Cade Johnson from South Dakota State is still on the board too. A big Senior Bowl guy, had a good year at South Dakota State the last couple of years. Shifty whip route specialist, your typical Patriots slot receiver. So that's where I would go there. I do want to touch on some corners real quick.
Yeah, I mean, we got a couple. Let's go through. We got a couple positions to kick.
We
haven't hit on kickers yet.
Oh yeah, I'll let you do kickers in a second. We talked about Tay Gowan. We could talk about Shaun Wade from Ohio State. He's falling down the board a little bit. He's somebody that's a big corner. Some people project him inside as sort of like a nickel, but he does have some quick feet, mirroring skills, and press man, all that type of stuff. The issue for him was that he just got destroyed by the competition last year at Ohio State. The Alabama guys in particular picked a lot on him in the national championship game, and it's tough for people to get that out of their heads that this player just got absolutely burned routinely by better NFL caliber receivers at Ohio State last year.
Sure. And this goes back to Bill saying sometimes the 2019 tape is better than the 2020. And
he was a guy that was going to be a top 50 pick based off the 2019 tape.
He was like squarely in the first round in most projections. And again, if you get, there's risk there. Sure. There's risk. His most recent tape isn't good, and football's a what have you done for me lately sport. But if you can bring him in with a non-premium pick and he proves that last year was a fluke, then you have a starting corner. You have a legitimate outside starting corner in the NFL. I think Shaun Wade is the exact kind of guy they would go for. He's certainly somebody I'm watching. Another one is Trey Brown out of Oklahoma. Yeah, it'd be kind of cool if they went Bama sooner. We talked about that. Was it Ambry Thomas who you were saying is kind of like the Malcolm Butler role where he can shadow and So Trey Brown's kind of the same thing to me where he's not the biggest corner, but he can play on the outside. He's got good enough ball skills where he can play on the outside, but he's going to be able to follow these guys around, some of these top receivers who like to play out of the slot. He's a guy who, again, maybe if he hits all his projections, this is more the prototype of the player than the true upside, but Brown checks a lot of boxes for them too. So he's a guy maybe I look at, and we know that certainly they've watched some Oklahoma defensive tape after they picked Perkins. So
yeah, so if you look at a couple other names from South Carolina, Israel Makuma, I think it is. He's 6'4", big corner, right? Like kind of like Jawan Williams, and he's extremely raw, but he's got a lot of physical traits, and he's got a ton of size. He's a big dude, and he plays physical. He plays up to his size. I liked his tape a whole lot. The one name though that I'm really interested to see if they have any interest in is Rodarius Williams from Oklahoma State, who's Greedy Williams' cousin, I think it is, or maybe his younger brother. He's related to Greedy. And he played a ton of press man at Oklahoma State, a ton of it. And I thought his technique was pretty good. I thought he was a pretty good player on tape at Oklahoma State. Plays their style of coverage, press man, getting guys' faces, ride them out down the field. Now, the issue with him is he's 24 years old. That's a big one. He's an older prospect. He had some. I think he transferred early on in his career. Had some things going on early on in his college career. So he's a 24-year-old rookie. So that's a big reason why he's falling down the board a little bit. But if they want a guy that has played a lot of snaps at the college level, that sort of understands how to play on the outside and press man, I think that he's somebody that will definitely be interested to them. In terms of nickels or slots, I just don't think they have that need. That
might be their deepest position on the roster right now.
Yeah, so I don't really see them going there.
There is one other kind of corner, actually, I will add. And, we've seen them in the past, Keon Cross and Ken Webster. They just like to go in the 7th round and get, elite physical athletes to come and play special teams.
Right.
We've seen them do that before. So a guy like Robert Rochelle from, I think he's Central Arkansas, right? Definitely fits that mold. Yeah, Central Arkansas. And then another one from Illinois, Nate Hobbs at 242. And I know corner named Hobbs is going to get Patriots fans all hot and bothered. But, if they go that Keon Crossen route, those are two names later on today, around like 6 o'clock. Keep an eye on.
Darren Hall, too, from San Diego State. Really raw, athletic cornerback prospect, super good athlete, but just raw, probably going to be more of a kicking game contributor. All right. Speaking of kicking game, Alex, do your 3 minutes on the place kickers in this draft.
Well, wait, do we want to do running backs first? I thought we were saving the best for last. I don't know how many positions we do, because I could talk about linebacker too. All right, we can do kickers now.
We talked a little bit about linebacker already. Okay. We did corner, we did linebacker.
We have to mention that I just say here's the linebacker. They could draft Dylan Moses, and that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Potential first-round pick, if not for injuries, another Bama guy. Okay, kicker is in play. Nick Folk is 36. He's on a 1-year deal. Evan McPherson's the top kicker in this draft. They met with him. We know they met with him multiple times, according to reports during the pre-draft process. 5th round. They love kickers in the 5th round. They love specialists in the 5th round. Evan McPherson out of Florida. The other guy to know for me, Jose Borregales is the second kicker, but I like him. I don't know that they would like him because they seem to prefer accuracy over power, and Borregales is more of a power guy. Riley Patterson from Memphis, kicker you, right? Steven Gostowski. They could really like Riley Patterson. When I say he doesn't have power, he's got a good enough leg. He's not going to be banging kicks through from 60. But, he's full. He'll hit from 50 when you need him to. You don't want to stretch him out much beyond that. But he's an incredibly accurate kicker, a guy who played multiple years, started multiple years for Memphis. So don't sleep. I don't know if he goes in round 5. He's probably a guy you're looking at more, 6 or 7. Maybe they move up late into round 6 to get him. But kicker is certainly on the board today. Kicker is absolutely on the board.
Yeah. I can't. Usually I roll my eyes at Alex when he does the whole kicker spiel, but definitely agree with him on this one that taking another kicker this year makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe they can get one as a UDFA though. I don't know if any of the kickers.
So there's not. Let me pull up. There's not a ton of kickers registered for the draft. Like normally there's a handful. Yeah. So NFL has 5 kickers registered for the draft. 3 of these guys I thought we all thought Goggles was going to get taken last year and he didn't. But McPherson's going to go. Borregales is going to go. Patterson should go. The other two guys are Ohio State and Michigan. So, like, maybe they grab one of those guys. Maybe Bill gets himself another Michigan guy, Quinn Norton. I objectively, honestly, haven't seen anything on the other two. But, this isn't a year where there's going to be 10, 15 UDFA kickers sitting out there. There's two guys. So that maybe there's a little more urgency then to go get the guy.
Good kicker report by Alex.
You're welcome.
If you want all your information for the Patriots, you should go follow Alex. But there's nobody in the market that's doing kickers better than Alex. All right, so definitely go give him a follow. Look, if you're a kicker guy, then he got you covered.
Nick Folk won them 2 games last year. He objectively cost them Justin Fields, but he won them 2 games last year.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at this right now. Like the kid from Ohio State, Habil, first knock is poor accuracy, under 40 yards. So he's not a guy they'll be interested in. Quinn Norton out of Michigan. Let's see here. Big leg, disappointing. Yeah, 57.1% field goal success on the road. So I don't think they'll be interested in either of those guys.
All right, so let's wrap it up here and let's do it like this. Give me 1 or max 2 guys that you want to see the Patriots come away with today.
Okay. Oh, you're going to limit me to 2. It kills me.
Yep, 2.
I guess. Can I give you 3?
All right, give me 3.
All right. For the sake of my mock drafts, I'd love to see them come away with Jalen Darden and or Chuba Hubbard. Like, I just think those guys have so much potential in what this offense is going to look like under Mac Jones. They're both guys who are probably going below where they should. So the value is there for Belichick with Hubbard. Guy was going to be the top running back on the board had he come out of college last year. Big program at Oklahoma State. Turned an air raid offense into a run-first attack. That's the kind of talent you're talking about there. And then my third one would be Dylan Moses. I think it'd just be really cool to add another Bama player, have him as the potential successor to Donta Hightower, who would be a great story. Yeah. I know people are going to look at his injury history and say, oh, it's just what the Patriots need, another injury-prone linebacker. We're not talking about the 15th pick. We're not talking about the 46th pick. Down here, day 3, this is where you take that kind of guy, low risk, super high reward. And then all the safety. I love all Caden Stearns, Tyree Gillespie, DeMar Hamlin, like the safeties we've talked about nonstop. Richard LeCount for weeks. Go get me one of those guys. I said 3 guys.
That was 3 safeties all in itself. So there you go.
I love the depth safety group in this class. I can't help it. I do.
Okay, so the first one, I agree with you 100% on Jalen Darden. If I'm taking a wide receiver out of this group that's left, Jalen Darden is the guy. I want that guy that Mac Jones doesn't have to do any work to get him the football, and he can just motion him out of the backfield, send him in motion pre-snap, put him in the slot and have him run a flare screen. Just get him the football and watch him run with it. The Patriots need that guy. Nelson Aguilar, he can separate over the top, the tight ends up the seams and over the middle of the field. Obviously, we know that Jonnu Smith has some of that versatility, but I really want to see somebody that's got speed that can do that sort of thing. So whether it's Jalen Darden or Daz Newsome, those would be my 2 picks in order to fill that role. Stone Forsythe. I think they need to get a tackle. To me, I like James Hudson from Cincinnati a little bit as well. But if there's a tackle to get here on day 3, it's Stone Forsythe.
Can I be lofty about Stone Forsythe?
Sure.
He's a little bit like Nate Solder combined with Trent Brown.
He's a little Nate Solder. I think he's Nate. I think he's a little Nate Solder.
But then he's 6'9", which is where the Trent Brown comes in.
Right. Nate Solder's 6'7". He's a really tall guy as well.
But he was like Nate Solder looked like a tight end. Like, he wasn't wide. Stone Forsythe he's only listed at like 310, I think. But looking at him, I would guess he's in the 320, 325 range. He's a massive guy.
Yeah, big guy that can really pass protect. The run blocking. Yeah. The biggest concern that you have with these big, tall dudes as run blockers is the high center of gravity. Right? They can't get underneath people because they're just so damn tall. They don't have that flexibility in their knees and their hips to really sink underneath and get low. It's tough for them to create real movement at the line of scrimmage. But I think Stone Forsythe is a guy that really pass protected at an extremely high level. So I think that's someone that they might be interested in. They always like the left tackles that can really pass protect, right? That's usually the trait that they look for first with their left tackles. The right tackles are usually the ones that they want a little bit more of a physical player. So left tackle, Stone Forsythe, I think he can develop into a starter in the Patriots system long-term. And just someone, if you want to pull up a game real fast before we get going here today, go watch him play against Georgia last year and Azeez Ojulari, who went in the second round of the draft last night. he shut out Ezekiel Ojulari, shut him out. It was a really great tackle tape. That was a lot of fun to watch. James Hudson from Cincinnati is another one who I think is a really good tackle prospect as well if they want to go tackle here. High upside, good pass protector.
Converted defensive lineman, which is interesting.
Oh, they like that. You remember last year against Cincinnati, Georgia bowl game. First half of the game, James Hudson shut out Ezekiel Ojulari and the Georgia pass rushers. Then he got ejected right before halftime for targeting. He hit a guy late out of bounds. It was really it was lame. It was weak.
It was a bad call.
It was weak, to put it lightly. And he gets ejected from the game. And in the second half, Desmond Ridder's running for his life, right? Because he doesn't have his starting left tackle. So you saw it in that game, just how impactful James Hudson was for Cincinnati. I think he's a really good tackle prospect as well. So dart in the 2 tackles there. And then at running back, I kind of feel like they need a running back now with Mac Jones at quarterback. I'm coming around to it. I could go Tyree Gillespie too. I love Tyree.
Yeah, Gillespie. I was going to say at least give me one of the safeties or one player on defense.
I love Tyree Gillespie as well, and I would be fine with Dylan Moses or Cam McGrone too at linebacker. I think those 2 guys can play linebacker. Derek Barnes is still on the board too from Purdue, who can play a little bit off the line, a little bit on the line. He's another linebacker prospect I could definitely see them kicking the tires on. But looking at running back, Demetric Felton, Kenneth Gainwell, Michael Carter, Chuba Hubbard. Those 4 guys are still on the board. I think coming away with one of those 4 would be really behoove the Patriots. So I think that's a good thing that we could see happen here today in terms of let's get Mac Jones as much help as we possibly can, right? Because he's not going to be a mobile quarterback.
Although how Belichick would it be to take a quarterback in the first round and then just chalk defense the rest of the way?
It's very Belichick. But when I look at
maybe mix a kicker in.
And this is nothing against Mac because I think he's a smart, accurate, good pocket passer, and I think the Patriots did fine with the pick. But when you look at Mac, he's not going to be individually a big-time playmaker, right? He's not going to create anything with his legs. He's not going to create anything with ridiculous arm talent. So they have to be able to get some of those yards after the catch. They have to be able to manufacture yards through their skill talent. So to continue to surround Mac Jones with as much talent as possible. But that's the thing is I say that, we say that, everybody in the chat says that. I don't think the Patriots are looking at it that way. I don't think that they're sitting back and saying, oh, we need to get a bunch of talent because we drafted a quarterback and it was 15. We need to get talent for Mac Jones. Other teams look at it that way, right? They draft a rookie quarterback. The Dolphins draft Tua Tagovailoa. They come back this year and they draft Jalen Waddle in the first round. Right, that's how other teams do it. The Patriots tend to look at it, the roster 1 through 90, and sort of look at all the positions and not just say, oh, well, we drafted this quarterback, so
let's not say they didn't add talent for Mac Jones. They did, just not in order.
Right.
They added a ton of talent about a month and a half ago that y'all seem to be forgetting about. They just didn't have Mac Jones then. Now they do. The timeline isn't what you want it to be, but they got Mac Jones some weapons. One more. Can I give one more player?
Yes, you can.
Because I didn't know about him until last week or until Tuesday. And now he's one of my favorite players in the draft, Big Bo, Quentin Bohanna out of Kentucky. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, so we talked about how Christian Barmore is going to be like this 3-4 end, pass rush tackle, right? All of that. I still think they need some more true nose tackle depth, like one of these 340, 350 pound, just space eaters. And Bohanna's going to be sitting there, 6th, 7th round, 356 pounds. Tyler Shelvin, he's still on the board. Yeah, Shelvin, Naquan Jones, Taquan Graham. I don't rule out another defensive tackle, but a nose tackle. Don't rule that out either.
Sure. So those are some names that Alex and I would like to see. That's about 20 names. We said we're going to get.
It's about half the players left. No
no big deal. So we cast a wide net here on Patriots Beat podcast.
That's what you have to do. It's all about casting. Oh, what did your big board finish as? We're at the hub board is at I think 167 players.
I was able to get to 142 players this year. So I already am sweating it because the cornerbacks are really thin at this point. So if they go quarterback again, there's only a couple of guys left that I actually watched. So we'll see what happens with cornerback. Okay. But 142 names was the final tally, I believe. Maybe 143. I think I snuck in one more there.
Are you three? You're 3 for 3, right? You had Perkins. I know you had Barmore.
I didn't have Perkins on my Patriots big board because I thought that he was going to be taken in between picks. I thought his 46 was a little too early, 96 was a little too late. He ended up lingering because of the suspension early on in his career ended up costing him. So I didn't have him on my top 50, but I definitely studied him before the draft.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's I love day 3. Day 3 is a ton of fun. Things get a little weird. Somebody's going to draft Ian Book today, and that will be my least favorite team in football. Oh, we didn't talk about is doubling down on quarterback.
Could it be Felipe Franks?
The RG3 Kirk Cousins model. They're going to add a quarterback, especially after they cut Dogala yesterday. They love having the extra arm in camp. Maybe it's UDFA. I like Peyton Ramsey for them out of Northwestern as a camp arm, just really smart quarterback, coach's son. I mean, you know the player I'm talking about, but yeah, I'm not ruling out. I'm not ruling it out. I think they'll at least sign a quarterback, a UDFA quarterback, but maybe they maybe they grab somebody.
They like Ellinger. They like Ellinger. And Ellinger,
as long as it's not Ian Book, I can swallow Sam Ellinger, right? Because Bill did the TiVo experiment already.
He did this is more, I would say, like the Danny Etling experiment, right?
I think he's I would say Etling's more suited for that role physically. Or sorry, Ellinger's more suited for that role.
I think Ellinger can sort of play. I'm not saying he's going to be Taysom Hill, but I think Ellinger has Taysom Hill athleticism. You know what I mean? Like, I think he could be a wide receiver, tight end, running back / quarterback, do it all type of guy. Now, do I want the Patriots doing what New Orleans has done with Taysom Hill? No, I have no interest in it. I think
Sam Ellinger to me loves contact more than any quarterback I've ever seen. I wonder if he could play defense.
Maybe, I don't know, but he's an athletic kid, he's not a quarterback at the next level, I don't think, but he's athletic enough that he could maybe do a position switch type of thing and figure out a role.
I mean, he has to if he wants to play in the NFL. He's not an NFL quarterback. He's not going to play quarterback.
Jamie Newman's still on the board. You want to go quarterback?
He really? He'll be the first quarterback to go today, I would think.
I would assume he might go very, very early on. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So there's the double down on quarterback talk.
There we go. All right. So let's wrap this up. 12 noon is when Eastern time, obviously, is when the draft kicks back off. The Patriots have 5 picks starting with 120 in the 4th round here today. So we will be back on the stream right before the Patriots make their pick at 120, carry you through the pick at 120. This is always when Bill Belichick throws a name at me that I did not research beforehand. So hopefully we get past the 4th round this year.
It's going to be Brendan White, and I'll tell you why. He's an freak athletic safety, and he's the only player on the board from Rutgers. Although he's projected to go on draft. He'll probably be UDFA. Oh, UDFA's today too. That'll be fun. But yeah, Brendan White, only player on the board from Rutgers. Had to look him up.
All right, so we are going to get into on the stream, come back around 120. Let's say 115, 116. When those picks come up on the clock, as long as the Patriots don't trade up, we'll be back on the live stream to break it all down for you. And then we will be back on the Patriots Beat podcast. That tomorrow morning we're going to do another show.
I might need to sleep tomorrow morning, but at some point tomorrow
we'll definitely do a show. If it's not tomorrow, we'll do a show Monday.
No, it'll be tomorrow. I just 10 a.m. tomorrow, maybe pushing.
Okay, yeah,
maybe a little later in the day. Follow us on Twitter. We'll let you know.
Yeah, and we'll do a whole recap of all 7 rounds of what the Patriots did in the draft. We'll spend most of the time on the day 3 guys since we've talked so much about the day 1 and 2 guys, but we will get back into some final thoughts on Mac Jones and Christian Barmore and Ronnie Perkins as well. So we'll see you guys then on the podcast tomorrow, and then we'll also get back to you when the Patriots are on the clock later today on the stream here. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in a few minutes.